Now, on with the show. As everybody knows, on the way down here, I was rushing to get here, and I had a little problem with the Virginia State Police. And I get pulled over, and he's an Irish state policeman, and he says, "Hut, hut, 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 hut. I've been waiting all day for you." Oh. So I says to the guy, "Well, I got here as fast as I could."
Nice!
But the crazy thing was, I looked at the ticket, I'm doing 78 miles an hour in a 65-mile-an-hour zone, and the officer's name is Kramer.
Ah, it's a good omen.
I'm going to start selling those. So anyway, I was with Kramer Guitars at a weird transition when we went from the metal neck series to the wood neck series. And for the yous that don't know me, I'm probably the first guy that built all the red, white, and black striped guitars for Eddie Van Halen. So if you have any questions about that stuff, just raise your hand and I'll ask any questions. You know, there's certain eras there, like Gary Kramer here was with at the very beginning, designing those guitars, making the metal necks, which I really love those guitars. I think we really created a cool thing. Again, I tried for years making metal necks guitars and I just never figured it out. I think it has to be made out of wood. That's my personal opinion. But they are beautiful, they're collectible. I think they look great. It's a certain distinguishable look. We did it at the Caro for a while. But anyway, I'm doing my own guitars right now. And it was very interesting because we went from that metal neck series to the wood, and we were picking out artists then. We were grabbing, you know, it was the big hair days, the rock and roll days. And I'll tell you what, I think I made more guitars with Floyds on them in those years than anybody. I'll tell you what, I destroyed more Stratocasters putting Floyds on them, and now they're valueless, so I have to admit that right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Van Halen thing, I think that's what most of you guys have an interest in. We had no banana nose headstocks, and the story starts with Eddie gave me a Ibanez Destroyer that had the cutout on it with a turnbuckle in it, and it was made by Ibanez. And we built him two of those guitars, and we painted them beautiful, red, white, and black with a nice clear finish. I brought him up to the Meadowlands in New Jersey to a concert, and he handed the guitars back to me immediately. And I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "They're just too nice." So from that moment on, we relicked every Van Halen guitar. Now, the way we did that, I think Steve will agree with me, we dragged them around the parking lot. I think we had an old rusty chain that we would throw at the guitar, handfuls of sheetrock screws we would throw at it. We would sand through the finish because Eddie liked them to look as if he was playing them. But the cool thing was, we had to make those necks, and what we had was the standard, it was a Stratocaster neck, and what I did was I lopped off two sides, and I added wood to it, so I had the room to cut out a banana nose, which we traced from the Ibanez guitar. Now, the only person who knows this secret is Cody Barra right now, and we were working with stone axes and rough tools back then. We had to bring our own material into the factory, and all those guitars were made with a piece of birch from my great-grandfather's bed that I had chopped up and sanded down. Now, the only thing about Eddie Van Halen, he swears to this day that a lot of his tone with those guitars is that it's a straight back neck, it's not a tilt back neck. So if you're going to build a copy of a Van Halen guitar, make it with a straight back, not a tilt back, and it'll give you the sound that you're looking for. I also carved the necks down very, very thin, and I think the only guy who also likes them that thin is Cody Barra. You know, and he's getting real close. He's starting to carve necks, and they're starting to feel pretty good. He destroyed one of my guitars last week, you know, but it does feel good. But Eddie liked very thin necks from top to back, but he liked them very wide back then. They were 1 3/4 inches wide, which is relatively wide. Now he likes them about 1 11/16, which is a standard width. But he liked very thin necks with a gauge 9 strings on them, okay? We built all those bodies out of poplar, or most of them out of poplar, right, Steve?
Yep.
I don't know what else we had. We had some maple there, but it was too heavy for him. But he thought poplar and a straight back neck is the tone that Eddie's looking for. Any questions yet?
Whose idea was the stripes?
That was Eddie's idea. I mean, it wasn't mine, I'll tell you what. I mean, I did all the stripes, but also I'll tell you a trick with the stripes. You can't just go to Lowe's Home Center and get a roll of 3/4 inch masking tape. There are different size tapes. Some of you guys know, but some of you don't. You here, young sir? young fella?
I just found out the hard way about that a long time ago.
Oh, about the tape thing?
Yeah, it runs and goes into the edges and doesn't work right.
You got to do it. We used 1/8 inch tape, 1/4 inch tape, 3/4 inch tape, 1 inch tape, and 1/2 inch tape. I think I had 5 rolls. If you look at some of the old pictures of the shop, you can see all the different rolls of tape laying around. And never leave your masking tape on the workbench. You got to hang it up or it's going to get all fuzzy from sawdust and stuff. I've been telling guys that for 35 years. Eddie Van Halen was a great guy. I liked him. He was a little rough to work with. His guy, Matt Brock, who is his personal valet, I think he's got the hardest job in the world. It's like taking care of a tiger without having a whip and a gun. But I'll tell you what, my partner Jeff and I, Jeff Hunter, we went up to Madison Square Garden around Thanksgiving last year, and we delivered him one of our guitars with a striped paint job on it. And where was I going with this? Anyway, he liked the guitar, but you know, I was very surprised that the guitars, they were totally different now than they were when we built guitars for Eddie back in 1981, 1982. The different feel, the different setups. I think the string gauges are the same. Again, I played every guitar in his rack, and they were all totally different tunings for the songs, but his tastes have changed over the years. This is where I was going. When he came on stage and plugged in, and he does use a cord now, he doesn't use a radio signal thing anymore. One note, and I'll tell you what, the hair went up on the back of my neck, and my little prehensile tail started going like this. He still, I think, is one of the top 5 guitar players of our lifetime. Up there with guys like Les Paul, Django Reinhardt, Jimi Hendrix, and these are all guys that have redefined or reinvented ways to play the guitar, and that's what Eddie Van Halen did. Now, when Dennis Berardi met up with Eddie Van Halen and Floyd Rose probably within 1 year, I think it was akin to him falling into a barrel of you know what, and coming out smelling like a rose, but it was a marriage made in heaven.
Yeah.
And we were, at that time, one of the top 5 manufacturers of guitars in the world. Is that Dennis Berardi right there?
Yeah, I was going to say, this is it's one of the ones you built, I think, for the first giveaway guitar at a NAMM show, or one of them.
Is that a mullet?
That's Floyd with the mullet.
Does that come off like a helmet, that thing? I think we all had hair like that back then. I have to tell you what, I've been in this business for 37 years now, and if you look real close, you can see a little bit of gray in my hair now. Can you look real close?
No.
That's what guitar building will do to you, okay? But I'll tell you what, we did have a great time there. Some of the guys are still around. They're building guitars. Are those serial numbers or something?
No, I was going to show you, actually have a picture of you on here.
Oh, there's one of me in there. Are these the photos from Andy Capiccio?
Yeah, I'll announce it in a minute. I'm going to have a running slideshow.
Oh, great, cool.
I don't think
okay.
that's Paul, though. Cause
Oh, is that me?
Andy said he didn't think that
Hold on
was
one
you.
second.
Andy said he didn't think that was you, Paul. I thought it was, but with the beard, I don't know.
I don't think that's me.
That was the heroin.
That guy looks like Captain Ahab or something with that mutton chops. I mean, that's kind of weird, you know? But I'll tell you what, it was a great time to build guitars. We met a tremendous amount of artists. I mean, we had the bragging rights of building guitars for Eddie Van Halen. He's still one of the greatest guys there. We redesigned the guitar, even though it was a Stratocaster, but we came up with some really great guitars. I worked personally with Dennis Klein. That was later on at Kramer, and we still use Dennis to this day. He lives out in Ohio right now in a barn or something. He's an eccentric artist, but he gave you guys a certain look that I think you like, you know. That new guy, Bo, is he here somewhere? There's the guy to paint guitars for you, man. Yeah, give that guy a hand. I asked him to do a guitar today. I want my proprietary logo to be a figure of half of a cow and half of a mermaid, and I want to call it Deep Sea Beef. Or maybe Surf and Turf would be good too. I think that would be good on a guitar. Yes, young fella?
Got a picture. This was supposedly made for Vitas, the Vitas Kratos, the tennis player.
The tennis player, yeah.
Did you know Eddie owns it now?
It was made for Ed, but Ed gave it to Vitas.
I would have to say that's one of my guitars.
That's your headstock.
Yeah, that's my paint.
Show that picture of the picture of the electronic
That is
box.
my guitar. I'll tell you a funny story that goes with that one. Can I just talk to you guys like a normal human being?
Sure. Yeah. I was looking for one too. I'm getting hungry.
Who's the other guy? John McEnroe. Okay, John McEnroe used to come to the factory with venous scariolitis. Okay, now I like it now. I can't go back now. It'd be embarrassing. So anyway, I had to build a Pacer guitar for John McEnroe, and we did it. He wanted in a camo paint job, like Corey's T-shirt there. Corey Barron.
Whatever.
Cody Barron. I'm sorry.
No, woodland camo.
Okay, it's woodland camo. So I built this beautiful Pacer banana neck one pickup guitar for John McEnroe, and I bring it up to Dennis Berardi's office, and I hand it to John McEnroe, and he says, "Wow, man, it's really great, but I can't use it." And I'm heartbroken at this point, and I say, "Why?" He says, "Because I'm left-handed." No one told me I'm not a tennis guy. So where is that guitar right now? We have to find that guitar. It's like a Van Halen guitar in camo.
It made an appearance in a shop in New York, right, Mike? Remember?
Yeah, that's right.
Somebody saw it in New York for sale.
Yeah, we didn't get pictures of it
Oh,
though.
you know who
out
Tommy
there.
Coletti is? He owns the Music Zoo out of New York.
No, I don't know who that is.
That's who owns that guitar right now.
That's one of my headstocks, though.
Oh yeah,
Sure,
that's
that's your-
definitely.
I'll tell you what,
That was
I don't know if you
made
guys
in
know, but there's actually 3 distinctive headstocks.
Special nut on it, the early
There's
nut.
3 sizes.
Early lock nut.
Okay, I sold the original patterns to that guy Eric Ernst from Avalon Vintage.
Oh.
You guys don't like him, huh? Okay. But anyway, I did tracings of it, and if you guys ever wanted those, all you have to do is come up to my shop, and I'll give you tracings of the original headstocks, even the tracings of the patterns of wood that glue onto the edges. I have that stuff. Okay. So, but again, I just have to reiterate that Eddie really now that there's only 1 or 2 guitars that have a red back. The one that Scott Smith has right now with the overbow to it.
Hey, that was my old neck.
That was you sold him that neck?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a real dog, that neck.
I would have kept it except that.
It was overbowed. I don't know what happened to that. Was that owned by Kim Coffey?
No, Glenn LaFerman owned it. And it
Oh,
sat-
LaFerman,
it sat
okay.
in a closet.
With tension on, no tension on it.
Ed brought that to a Kramer shoot, and Glenn didn't know what to do with it. Ed's like, "Here, use it." And Mike probably has that picture somewhere, but
Right.
it's sitting in the windowsill with Eddie peeking through.
Oh, cool.
And he
The
just
photograph, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
He left it there, and Glenn took it home and sat in the closet for 20 years.
But I think I only painted 2 guitars with the red on the back of the headstock. The rest of them, the tape went all the way around.
The
Okay.
blue headstock had the tape.
The blue headstock went all the way around too. Now that's another guitar that I got a rash of shit from Dennis Berardi for. I built that guitar, and I don't know why I made a blue headstock. We're just fooling around. Dennis Berardi was quite angry, and I said, "Well, what's the big deal? I could repaint it or build another neck." But at that point, Eddie saw it and said, "I like that," and he took it. Now that's a pretty famous guitar. That's owned by Bob Nally now. Mark Nally. He owns that guitar now. So you did a pretty good job copying that thing, you know. So, but that's the only one in existence.
Just tell everybody real quick the secret of the 90-degree Goto versus the Schaller Minis that we've heard about. How he claims they're Schaller Minis, but they're not really Schaller Minis. They're
Well, you know what? When we had tuna machines there, that's a Goto machine.
Right.
We used gold Goto machines because we had boxes and boxes of them. But if you look at the Schaller Minis, it's what they call an OEM machine. It's a little lower in profile, and the tab that comes out for the screw hole, it's on an angle. It's not straight out. That's how you can identify a OEM machine, and that's what we would use at Kramer. As a matter of fact, I use the OEM Schaellers on my neck, and it's the only tuner that fits on without sticking past the periphery of the shape of the neck. It has to be on a little bit of an angle, you know. But mainly we used Gotos with gold hardware, and that was left over from when we started with those Strat-style headstocks. I don't know why we had gold. I guess because the Rockinger tremolos were all gold.
Yeah.
You know,
And
so but that's what we used. Another thing about the neck, you can see it's got 6 bolts. On every neck that I made for Eddie Van Halen, it had a 4-bolt neck, but underneath there were 2 more screws. So they were all 6-bolt necks because they had to be strong for him. He was pretty rough on those guitars.
actually, I got actually want to pull one up.
Yeah, because most of this means absolutely nothing to me.
This one I wanted to. This is the one we were talking about earlier.
Is that the blue one?
The real one, yeah. Make sure I can get some better shots here.
I didn't put the reflectors on the back though.
You didn't?
No. Now that guitar, the blue headstock, I believe, was given to Kim Coffey. Hey Cody,
Yeah.
am I right by assuming that Eddie Van Halen gave that guitar to Kim Coffey?
Yes, and then Kim Coffey sold it to a guy named Rodney Hoffman.
Okay, cool.
Had it
Okay.
for,
Oh, the guy down in Texas.
No, he's up in Seattle. That's my old guitar player.
Look at that. I think that may be the only reverse paint job I ever did. Now, why did I do that?
Why didn't I know you when I owned it?
Why did I do that? What does that say?
Met Eddie Van Halen in January of '84.
That's Cody Barra?
No, that was in there. I don't know. That's 2 years after it was made. So
That's got to be Cody Barra's handwriting.
Yeah.
Apparently, he was the biggest
That's
Van
Cody
Halen
Barra,
fan.
right?
That's Cody,
Cody
yeah.
right there.
He's the biggest poser and Eddie Van Halen fan in the world.
I'm out of here.
That's abuse, man.
So what's the story with the blue versus the red? Was it made for another guitar? What was the deal with that?
No, that you know, if you look at some of the pictures, we were just trying to put together whatever we could with whatever we had. I just, out of the blue, I painted that thing blue. I don't know why.
Out of the blue.
Dennis Ferrari was very, very angry at me over that. And but Eddie Van Halen liked it and kept it. You know, we were painting anything red, white, and blue. I'll tell you what, because we live on the Jersey Shore, we were all heavy cigarette smokers back then. Eddie Van Halen smoked Marlboros. I was smoking Lucky Strikes. We needed ashtrays, and I would go out to the beach and get those big surf clams and use them as ashtrays. But what we did was we flipped them over and we painted them red, white, and black. So there were all these seashells painted red, white, and black as ashtrays at the factory, and that's what we used. Because back then we were smoking cigarettes in the factory. I was telling somebody today that we had an old Greek guy who used to paint the guitars for us, and he used to sit on top of a 55-gallon drum of acetone smoking cigarettes. We never had an explosion. What was his name? Do you remember his name?
Just Greek guy,
The
man.
Greek
They were
guy. He
just-
spoke no English, but he painted like every Kramer guitar in here, you know?
Dad, bring it out. Bring it
Bring it
out.
out. I paint for you.
Bring it out. I paint.
I think that guy used to smoke cigarettes and paint guitars.
And he gave us Uzo.
Did he have Uzo? He was a nice old guy. He's probably long gone now.
Oh yeah, he's got to be dead.
So, you know, another funny thing about painting
Never wore a
polyester,
mask.
we had what they call a water wash spray booth.
It's from the old school.
And the buildup of paint got so thick on the spray booth that I used to chip it off with a hammer and grind it down and polish it and make like rainbow guitar picks out of polyester. Now they had a really great sound to them. They were a little clicky because they were real heavy. But if you ever see these handmade polyester guitar picks, I made them off the spray booth at Kramer.
Yeah.
Hey Paul, when you sprayed the guitars for Ed, was it literally rattle can or was it?
It was all rattle can spray, whatever we could find.
Compound after you were done, or?
Compounded?
Yeah.
No, it was right off the gun. That was it. Once we painted it, it was done. You know, at that point we would relic it, but it was right out of the spray can. As a matter of fact, there's one where there's a blob of paint with black dripping down it. That's a pretty famous one too, I think.
It's in the hard rock.
Yeah, that could. I remember distinctly when Eddie did that right in front of me, and it really made me angry that I thought he ruined the paint job by doing that. Just by, and you know, after I painted it nice, he came in and ruined it, you know. So, now what are we looking at here? Oh man.
This is actually the 5150, the real 5150.
Yeah, that's not my guitar.
Just the neck. Supposedly you made the neck for the 5150. You gave Eddie a bunch of necks before you left Kramer.
Well, you know what was flattering about that was, over the years, Scott Smith told me that of all the guitars that Eddie would take apart and put together, that he liked my necks the best. I must have had some certain mojo that he liked, you know, but he said my necks were the best.
What's your opinion on that? Look at these swirls. Would you say that's basswood or ash or poplar?
I'll bet you that's poplar. It can't be ash, I don't think.
No, I'm telling you last night.
Yeah, where that's worn.
I know, but
Look where that's worn away, man.
That looks like poplar to me.
You gotta hope it
Here.
is. That's what I put on YouTube.
I don't recall him making too many basswood ones. Most of them were poplar, and Eddie thought his tone came from poplar. That's interesting. Look at that.
It broke at the headstock. Ernie Ball repaired it
Right.
back in '91, so that's actually a
I don't ever remember putting a star on one, but I remember Eddie did it.
No, it's just a sticker.
And we had those old blocky Kramer logos. That's all we had for those. As a matter of fact, a lot of those were Pioneer and Pacer logos that we cut off with a scissor just to get the word Kramer out of it, you know?
Paul had a stack of pre-CBS Fender decals there on his bench too, right?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
Decals are easily had now, you know? As a matter of fact, I get all my decals now from Scott Smith.
So, but to clear up though, the ones that you made, were they out of big necks or were they strat heads that you had made these into? Or what were they?
Because of the era that I was there, we're talking about 1981, 1982. Now, let me think about this. It was May 1982 that I designed the, what I call it, you call it the Beak, I call it the Chicken Hawk. That's when we got the first cease and desist letter from Fender to change the headstock. And Dennis Berardi came to me and said, we got to change this. And I just went to the bandsaw and I cut the little half moon off. And I was telling somebody today, there's hundreds of those all over the factory, you know. And we tried to repair it because they were painted necks at that point and we had to change them. And we never were able to repair that one edge. So there's a lot of rough necks out there where we stained it and tried to spray over to something. It never worked, you know. But that was May of 1982. So I would have to say that most of the necks that I made for Eddie were made out of the Stratocaster shaped necks. And what I did was I cut it off square and sanded the edge so it looked like a arrowhead. And then I made these blocks of wood that gave me two parallel surfaces to put a clamp on and glued it together. Then I bandsawed the shape out. I certainly had to fill the holes, and you could all see the repaired holes in it because we put like just birch dowels in it, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say, were there any dowels holding those wings on though, Paul?
No, not at all. Just a strap, just a glue joint.
Did you use the Fuller glue? Or epoxy, or you don't know?
No, I used just regular whatever white glue we had at the time. Yeah, you're talking about the epoxy that we used
The
over
stuff
there.
we used to put the inserts into the aluminum necks, that went on.
Yeah, I didn't like that stuff. It took, you know, it was nasty.
Smelled good.
Yeah, I just used just regular white glue, and it was probably just Elmer's white. I don't think they even had Titebond back then. You know, it's amazing, when I started in this business, they never had things like crazy glue or electric screwdrivers. I never even know how we got along without it, you know. And now we use crazy glue like every day of the week as much as we screw things up, you know. But, you know, another thing that was interesting, too, I built the first flip-up thing for Eddie Van Halen. You guys know what that is?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the, it's what they call like a butler's table.
Yep.
And I made the first one out of wood, also out of my grandfather's bed. And he liked that because he was doing all that finger tapping stuff, you know. And then that fella, Jeff Metz, who ran the machine shop, made one out of plexiglass. And I think Eddie has a patent on that now.
Yeah.
He did patent that.
There used to be a poster out where it showed him actually with it flipped up, him playing it, you know, both
Right,
hands on
okay.
the fretboard.
Was it a wood one?
No, it was plexi.
The plexiglass one, too,
Now,
okay.
now I have seen pictures of the 5150 with the wood one on.
Right.
So.
Now, I'll tell you an interesting story. In January, we went to the NAMM show in California, and we borrowed the Hot for Teacher guitar, which was the last guitar that I built for Eddie Van Halen. And when I had gotten that guitar back, I was really amazed. It was a really wow factor to see that thing after 25 years, you know, with all the wear and tear on it. And when I flipped it over, there was evidence of one of those things being on it. So, does anybody remember seeing the flip-up thing on the Hot for Teacher guitar? Okay, cool. So that was, I don't know which one was on there.
Somewhere on here, but I've got them on here somewhere. I just can't
It was
find
one
them.
of the, I actually think there was one, the 84.
Yeah,
It was the
Yeah.
84 and the Hot for Teacher. I don't think
it's on the 5150 has holes too.
Oh,
It has holes too.
Leo, do you have a question?
Is that from?
Hey Warren, did you find that menu?
No, I didn't.
You got him at the desk.
Okay. I'll tell you a quick history of myself, okay? I built my first guitar in high school when I was 15 years old. I was very lucky because my high school teacher lived across the street from my grandmother and was my mother's babysitter. So when I walked into school, everybody had to make like an eagle or an end table or something, and I told my teacher that I wanted to build a guitar, so that's where I built my first guitar. But in 1969, when I was in school, I worked a summer job with Dan Armstrong. I built all those plexiglass guitars, and the funny thing was I was a 115-pound kid working on a big shaper, And every once in a while, that neck would get away from me and also go through those cinder block walls like they did at Kramer with the lathe. I also worked for Sam Coombs, who was a famous archtop guitar builder in Linden, New Jersey. And then when I was going to college, I went to a junior college in Cranford, New Jersey. It was called Union County College. I was working for the Guild Guitar Company as a repair technician. And that's where I met a fellow named Rich Excelante, who developed the American Showster guitar that looks like the tail fin of a 57 Chevy. So I worked with him quite exclusively developing that product. And that's now owned by a friend of mine. Bill Meeker owns that, has a patent on that guitar right now, but I don't think he's doing anything with it. From there, I ran a shop in Union, New Jersey called Omni Guitar, where we built acoustic instruments for Sears of Harmony Stella level guitars, like they were entry level guitars. But I really felt in my element building acoustic instruments. From there, I'm trying to think, this is ancient history here now, okay? I did work for, right before Kramer, let me think about this, I worked for a vintage guitar store in Red Bank, New Jersey called Guitar Trader. And I'll tell you what, I don't think there's a guitar on the face of the earth made by Fender, Martin, Gretsch, Guild, or Rickenbacker that I haven't worked on because of that shop. We saw everything. You know, an interesting story about that shop.
That was a place to go.
Well, I'll tell you what, at that time, I'm talking like, I was there for 4 years in the mid to late 1970s. Back then, there were only 4 vintage guitar stores in the United States. There was Norm Harris in Los Angeles, George Groom, who's still in business, the Mandolin Brothers, and Guitar Trader. Now there's a vintage guitar store probably every 60 miles between New York City and Los Angeles. But back then, it was only 4 guys.
And he was the biggest one. I mean, they were big enough to make Gibson commission a 59 Les Paul reissue.
Well, the funny story about that was, I was telling somebody the story, I don't know where, the guy's name was Dave DeForest, who owned that, okay? We called him Dave the Dirtball, and we wanted to murder him, but we couldn't figure out how to get rid of the body. But anyway, at one point, we bought every 1958 to 1961 Les Paul standard that was available on the face of the earth. And back then, we bought them from $1,000 to $3,000 a piece. At that point, we squirreled them away. We had about 30 of them. And then 18 months later, we released them to the public for $10,000 a piece. And at that point, that was the beginning of the end for pricing of that guitar.
I used to get their newsletter. I can remember seeing them 7,500, 7,000.
Now, the newsletter was the paper thing, right?
Come in the mail, right?
We made that ourselves, you know. We stood on a stepladder with a Instamatic camera taking those pictures of all those guitars and, you know, doing it. I still use the inventory system that we did there in my own vintage guitar shop now, and it still works, you know. Dave eventually sold that business, and he bought a hotel in South Miami Beach and condoized it and made $1 million. He bought 3 of them, I think, so he's doing pretty good. He's still around. I think he comes up to the New York City area and hangs out with Larry DiMarzio. They're really good friends, you know. I still see Timmy Comer.
They used to get the DiMarzio parts and sell those as what, like whatever, home-built guitars out of DiMarzio.
Well, keep in mind, back in the 1970s was the beginning where you were able to get over-the-counter parts for guitars. I think companies like Mighty Mite were coming into effect right then. Larry DiMarzio was building pickups. Larry DiMarzio probably built pickups before Seymour Duncan. You know, and that's when things became available, where guys like us were able to start swapping parts and stuff around, you know. It was pretty cool. So anyway, I worked for Kramer, after the Guitar Trader thing, I worked at Kramer Guitars for a while, and I was only there, keep in mind, for about 3 years myself, and after that I quit there, and I went to my own shop, and I developed a line of guitars called Custom Dreams that I think you guys are probably aware of. That was a short-lived thing, and from there I worked for Roger Sadowski up in New York City, and then I had become the general manager of BC Rich Guitars. And in the interim, I was always doing my own project, doing repairs and building custom guitars. And then now we're doing our new Unkert guitars right now. So I'm trying to bring back a little bit of the history of the old Kramer look, you know, but I redesigned it so it's a much more utilitarian instrument. So it'll balance on your lap, it'll balance on your strap. And I'm trying to create a guitar that a guy can get for under $2,000 with name brand American parts, or mainly American-made parts. We're still using Shailers, and the only Oriental part on that guitar is the Godot, the bridge on that. And I just can't get an American part of quality, so we use that. But so is that the wood one or the plastic one there?
The plexi.
That's a plexi one. Jeff Metz built that.
Did he?
Yeah, I think he built that. Yeah.
Tell us the story when Dennis came down and strong-armed you.
Oh yeah. Right after I left working for Kramer Guitars, I was working at a store building Van Halen guitars. Right after it, and I had them on display, and I had the poster, and I heard someone open the door, and I turned around, and I went, yeah. And it was Dennis Berardi, Hyman Peller, who was one of our top sales guys for the Northeast area, and I believe it was Tony Costello, who was the vice president at the time. And they came down and they asked me in a polite way not to build the Van Halen guitar. And at that point, I just said, it's no big deal. I'll stop doing it. And I stopped, And now years later, I still build a couple of them once in a while. I mean, there's a billion guys building them, And if guys call me, I always try to help them out and give them the information about it. I'm tickled pink to give you as much information as I can about it. I can't capitalize on it too much, though. It's like, we even reached a high watermark with our advertising of, milking that, because I don't want to have problems with Eddie. He's a hard guy to work for, and it is his proprietary musical instrument, A lot of guys ask me about the double neck guitar. Now, there was one red and white one, and there was the yellow and black one.
Oh, I'll get that real quick. Give me a second.
And that is not me.
No.
He's almost as good looking, but not quite.
Just half a second. Got it.
Now, we are going to build another double neck coming up with the 2 unk necks on it real shortly. You get paid for doing this stuff, right?
No.
Look at that thing. Can you see how the tuners are for the 12-string neck?
Oh, there's a Van Halen one.
They go through the headstock and down to the bottom, and that's where the 6 tuners are. What kind of bridge is that? Is that Rockinger?
Yeah.
Wow.
Who's holding that mic? Andy Peach.
That's Andy.
Is this Andy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's Andy.
Now, the Rockinger tremolo was actually coined as the first Eddie Van Halen tremolo. I think there's 1 or 2 of them in the building right now. And it's interesting with that tremolo, it had a locking system, but when we made the nut, to counteract any binding problems, I just made a brass nut because we could make it look like gold, even though I would have preferred another material, but I didn't slot it. So when that thing became loose, the strings, we felt it would come back to its desired location. So most of these Rockingers, if you look at them, they may have some wear marks on the brass nut, but they were made originally as a smooth piece with no slots at all. We thought that was the thing to do. But the design of the Floyd Rose was really brilliant. Keep in mind, too, the first Floyd Roses had no fine tuners on them.
Was that the van?
Yeah, that was the van.
That's not Dave Main's van, is it?
The one Bill Barkalow would drive, and Jeff would drive up to sports all the time.
Bill Barkalow.
Oh, there it is.
Oh no, I'm sorry, that's Ronnie DeFalco's van.
That's Ron DeFalco's van, yeah, the brown one.
That's the one with Rob Me I'm a Musician stickers all over the back of it. And he would keep all his gear in the back and had all the stickers all over it, So.
I'll tell you what, you guys can't begin to realize the camaraderie that we had at that factory. We were all young guys, and we had such a good time building guitars and hanging out with rock stars. I mean, it was an apex of our careers, I think.
There's a lot of smoke in the back of that van.
Look at that. Now is that my workbench there?
Yeah.
That's my old workbench.
Yep.
Smoking cigarettes.
That's all your stuff.
Is that young Andy?
Yep.
That's Andy Papiccio in the middle and Dennis Berardi on the young Dennis Berardi.
And that's Dave Maines on the end.
Was that Dave Main? Yeah, look at him. That fella used to dress up like a woman.
Not at that time. Not then.
His name was Myra Maines, and he would perform as a woman.
He's not going to be happy you told that.
Is that Steve Maines? Or what's his last name?
Dave.
Look at that.
Wasn't he on the forum one time?
This I'll tell you what, guys, this stuff is rich. Is this available to the public, this stuff?
Actually, let me say it real quick.
It's going to be.
There's one of the.
Thanks to Andy Capiccio, these photos were something he had in a box, and I really real quick want to thank Steve Z. He scanned all these in for us. There were a big box that Andy gave him of old photos, so clap for Steve on these.
All right.
Let you know what's going on with these. I don't want to take away from you. I want you Actually, what's going on with these? We're launching a website for Andy called, I think, what'd you name the URL?
It's just andypapicio.com, I guess he's going to use just.
Right.
So they'll be in one place.
So these will all be available. All be available in about probably a month or month and a half, and we'll have links so you can see all these rare photos. And I think there's more to come. I think Steve's still got another box or two to go through or something like that. So anyway.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we have to thank Andy Condicio for these photos, man. This stuff is priceless, you know. I did see Andy today, and he's going to try and make it over here to say hello to everybody. But that's really wonderful. I just can't believe how young we all were back then. How many years ago was that? 25, 30 years ago?
That was, this was like November of 82, so.
I used to have to play with that guy every day. Look at that. Is that Valerie, right?
Yeah.
She's come to the factory.
That was into 83 at that point.
Right, that's at the assembly area. You can see all the bodies behind them. I'll tell you one thing about Valerie Bertinelli. I found myself in awe of her. She was a very beautiful woman in person, and she just reeked of quality. Everything was perfect. Her hair, her makeup, she smelled good, she carried herself well.
She's a sweetheart.
Yeah, she was a lovely woman.
Did you ever do anything with her while I was passed out?
Nah.
Hey, Paul, do you remember that bass there? It's all Babinga, I think.
No, I remember that, yeah.
That was like the test bed. All kinds of damage.
Probably Gary would remember. Didn't we build a lot of guitars in the early days out of like Shedua, Bubinga? There were a lot of exotic woods back then, you know. As a matter of fact, if you look at some of the old necks with the regular Fender style pocket, a lot of those inserts, we called them, were out of exotic woods like Bubinga and Shedua. I think
Hey,
that was
back,
the wood.
Mike. Go back. One more.
Who's that girl?
No, one more. The black and white one. There it is. That's me off to the side.
Look, you were 12 years old then.
Look at that hair.
You were 12. That was almost a mullet too, dude.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel.
I couldn't afford a barber, man.
Flying mullet.
Holy. Now, there's a rare photo of Eddie playing a metal neck guitar.
Yeah.
You don't see him doing that too much. He didn't have much interest in that stuff.
That was a bass.
Yeah.
And I'm taking a Duke down off the rack, which he was playing later. You can see I'm holding the white Duke there.
Boy, this stuff is priceless, man, I'm telling you.
That's Liz's hand right there, offering to light a cigarette.
I remember that hand. I had a short-term affair with that
So if
girl.
anyone questions what kind of paint they used on Ed's guitar,
Oh, man, look at that stuff.
Hey, Paul, in your opinion, what do you think would have happened to Kramer if Ed never would have signed on? Is there a future without him?
You know, it's hard to tell. I think everything ran downhill from Eddie Van Halen. But Dennis Berardi was a wonderful politician, if you will. You know, he knew how to talk to people. I think when you met him, you immediately liked him.
Yeah.
I personally never had a problem with him. You know, there were some dark things that went on and off like any company, you know, but he was a likable guy, and he was a real wheeler dealer.
hey, go back to the back of that headstock, Mike. Okay. Paul, did you paint that?
No, I just zoom in. I can zoom in. Hang on.
Sorry, read that?
What's number one ever Van Halen model?
I'll tell you what, I really don't remember that, but I remember having those rub-on letters that you bought at the drugstore to do that, though.
I didn't remember it being on there at all, and I handled that neck a lot.
I don't think we ever, I mean, I didn't do that.
But that was that night when it went on the guitar, so you had to have put it on there.
I mean, I could have. Keep in mind, it was 30 years ago, you know.
Does everybody know which guitar that is? Does everybody understand?
That's the Frankie
That's
ad.
the Kramer ad, Frankie.
Yeah.
That's correct. I've wondered, I've had pictures of the, not close-ups, but stage shots of that guitar, and I've always wondered if that was, you know how those headstocks, they were kind of curved underneath on that side.
I really sanded them
It
smooth.
could have slid down and scraped into the white paint, or if that was actual writing. I've always wondered that.
Well, now we know it's writing, you know.
Great.
That's the guitar.
That's the most famous poster of Eddie right there. Now, are we going to be able to get our hands on these photos? Is this going to be online?
Yes, that's what I was saying.
We'll get them up pretty
We're gonna have a
soon.
whole website with these up there. Andy wanted to kind of talk to Andy and have taken ownership of these so that no one of us took credit for it because we wanted to make sure it was his and all that stuff. So
that's what we thought about. We thought it'd be the best thing to do. So
Right. Yeah, it's important that,
we want to watermark them and keep them from going out to the, you know how people get with
he wants
photos.
everyone to see them, but he doesn't want people just putting them all over the place and, using them for all kinds of various things. So.
I mean, they're absolutely priceless. They're
Yeah.
priceless. So, well, I don't know, Master. I'd like to get Gary up here and let him tell you what the history was before me. I mean, I guess, when did you start with around 1971, 72? Was it that early? 72, okay. I didn't get to Kramer until 1979, I think, and I left around early 1983. It was right before a trade show. But I'll tell you, I feel very fortunate that I was there for what I consider the apex or high watermark of what we did there, I mean, certainly you could see that it really escalated and went on its own road, but it was a very interesting period to be there, And if you guys ever have any questions or want to ask me what I did there, I mean, I have to be very honest with you. I think I was just in the right place at the right time, and it was just pure dumb luck that I was the guy that built the guitars for Eddie Van Halen. I mean, he didn't source me out. I was one of the only guys at the factory who really knew how to build a guitar. I mean, we had a lot of guys there that had specific jobs, and we did have a pretty good amount of people like Bill Spies and Gary who did some of the engineering and designing of this product. But when I came on board, there were no real guitar guys there, It was just people who had very specific jobs, So I was in the right place at the right time, and I feel very fortunate over the years that, Eddie Van Halen became a friend of mine. We built guitars for him, and, I'm just tickled pink to share this stuff with you. So, but anytime you guys want to call me or you got a question, you can call me at our, guitar company anytime you want. Steve, you were there for the whole thing, and, there's guys like John Hengy out there. You'll recognize his name, Dave Maines. These are some of the guys that are still around, And we'll definitely get one of these, all the guys at the convention one of these days, Like we'll get an alumni together or something,
We can't even get them in the same room back in Jersey. They want to kill each other. John and Dave are cousins.
But I'll tell you one more trick before I go. I don't want to keep going on and on and on. But if you want to make $1 million building guitars, I'll tell you the secret. You just start with about 2 million. Okay, and that's how you make $1 million building guitars. So anyway, I think I'm going to stop right there and let Gary Kramer come up here. He's another luminary in the industry. He's a hero of mine. I hope he's a hero of yours. Make welcome Mr. Gary Kramer.